What's up, YouTubers? It's 2017 at the abandoned monitoring station. Petty Officer Possum and Old Man Cricket coming at you for another round of Global 1940 Axis and Allies. Here's a shot at our upgraded board, courtesy of the design posted by Young Grasshopper and duly printed up for this year's throwdown. See, we got the board set up here, but before we engage in the first game, we're doing a short video to explain the house rules that Chris and I have adopted. If you remember the end of our last game, game 10 in the series, we had some hand-wringing about the effectiveness of the J1 attack and what we're going to do to try and balance out the game. And we've spent the last year on and off kind of thinking about what that was going to be, and this is what we've come up with. We'll do a quick run through here just to explain what makes our house rules different than the other ones that are floating around out there, what we've borrowed, what we've added, and give some context for the game video that's coming up. These are very much preliminary. This will be our first time play testing these rules, so they're definitely still a work in progress. You can see we're already on version 1.03, having edited them a few times already. And here is a quick summary. We're not going to go through each and every little rule, but this is kind of a highlight of what the significant rules are. So first, we've added a few additional pieces or rules about how the pieces work to the game. Start down here with facilities. So in addition to minor factories and major factories, we've adopted some rules to kind of add some nuances to those. So we have now 4 different levels of military facilities. Starting at the bottom here, we have military bases. These cost 10 IPCs. They produce only infantry and transports, and they can be placed anywhere. And that means 1 value territories, 0 value territories, and islands, which really kind of expands the possibilities of where you can place units. One step up from that, we have the minor factory. These cost 15 now. Used to be 12, but we've balanced that out to cost 15. They can produce any type of unit. They cost 15 IPCs now instead of 12. And they're subject to the normal factory placement rules. Have to have a territory worth 2 or more. Step up from that is major factory. These cost what, 20? 20 IPCs. And they can produce up to 5 units, subject to the normal placement rules. And last but not least is the industrial complex, the big bad boy. That can produce 10 units, costs 30 IPCs to put one of those down on the board, and is the maximum production value that you can get. So additional little facility tokens here, some additional new things you can build. One are radar stations, and the second is pillboxes. Pillboxes, I know they increase the coastal defenses of a territory. They'll, I believe, offer 2 infantry the ability to defend at 1 higher value. Is that right, Chris?
Yep.
And then radar stations allow planes to intercept from bombing raids at a 2 instead of a 1, if I recall.
Well, at a +1, because now we've changed the rule to intercept to be at +2, so they'll intercept at a 3.
That's right. So beefs up that intercept value pretty handily. Chris, I'm going to pass the video over to you, and you can explain the rest of the new rules.
So we've changed the victory condition rule. We have widely adopted the Cliffside Bunkers token system and abandoned the victory city conditions for winning. However, we have 8 Axis victory tokens and 8 Allies victory tokens. If any of them are obtained during the game, we will certainly describe them in more detail. The significant difference is in the version that the Cliffside Bunker plays, you never lose the token once you get it. Under our house rules, you can lose the token. The thought being the victory token should represent strategic gains and benefits on the board, and if you lose that strategic benefit, then by definition you're farther away from winning than you were before. And we also wanted to avoid strategies that were based on hit it and quit it, sort of go everything in Africa to get the Africa token and then completely abandon Africa after that. If Africa is a strategic value that gets you closer than winning, then you should maintain control of Africa in order to win the game.
Right, and I'll jump in here. Like this was a rule that was important to me because, in my view, anyway, when no disrespect to the folks that play this way, but I think it changes the tenor of the game. When you play with victory tokens that you can never lose, you're playing soccer instead of war, right? You're just trying to score goals. And once you score that goal, you get a point that you can never lose. But that's not how war is played, right? A war game represents, as Chris said, strategic gains. You're trying to defeat the other nations militarily, and you do that by gaining strategic milestones and ultimately putting your nation in an alliance in a position where they are dominant over the other ones and have actually defeated them. Yeah, scoring points that you can't lose doesn't represent that. Gaining and amassing strategic gains to the point where your side has overwhelmingly outnumbered the other side by having all these strategic conditions in play at once, that still represents a war game. So that's why we've kept that aspect of victory tokens.
Sort of like the Cliffside Bunker version, once you get a victory token, you get a tech breakthrough. There are two different tech breakthrough charts that we've established, but unlike the Cliffside Bunker version of the rules where you get to pick, depending on the victory token you get, we've assigned half the victory tokens to chart 1 and half the victory tokens to chart 2, roughly reflecting the sort of utility of getting the token. If, for example, one of the victory conditions is no capital ships of Japan in the Pacific, representing the notion that it is of strategic value to the Allies to have complete control of the Pacific. It doesn't make a lot of sense that if you achieve that strategic value that you would get the ability to have better tanks. So the charts are broken up so that you're more likely to get a breakthrough that helps your Navy or your Air Force, something that would be necessary to obtain the victory condition in the first place. Obviously, Japan could always build another capital ship and you would lose your token, but you never lose the technology, and you only get the tech roll the first time the token is obtained. In order to balance off the losing the token, we've also changed the end of a game rule. Before you had to cycle through all of the nations. Now you just need to have 4 victory tokens and at least 2 more than your opponent. So if your opponent has 3 and you have 4, then you need 5. At the end of one game turn, which means at the end of France's turn. So even though Japan could technically build a battleship and take your token away, as long as you can sink that battleship on your next turn, get the token, you count them up at the end of the turn. If you've got 4 and the other guy has 2, you've won the game. 2 other quick rules that are likely to come into play. We've added wolf packs to the game. This is only a benefit for German submarines. If Germany has 4 or more submarines in any sea zones, then 3 of the submarines will get +1 on their attack, which obviously has a lot of strategic value if the other side doesn't have destroyers, because now you're getting surprise attacks at a 3. And if you get super submarines, you're looking at surprise attacks at a 4. So there is an incentive to not ignore the Atlantic Ocean with the ability of forming wolf packs. Now, whether or not that actually changes the strategy, we'll find out. But that's one of the rule changes. And the other rule change that is available to all nations are airborne assaults. It is a advantage to air bases. Anywhere you have a working air base, you can launch an airborne assault, which is 2 infantry units that paratroop into a battle that exists, either a land invasion or an amphibious assault. And you drop in 2 extra infantry units from any area where there is an airbase. You cannot paratroop in units by themselves. So if you don't have a pre-existing force moving in, you can't paratroop in. So they're only a means of getting additional troops into the combat. However, the two paratroopers come in on a plane and it is subject to anti-aircraft fire. 1 dice at the plane. If the anti-aircraft hits, then you lose both of the guys, not just one of them. And those rules will work just like the other anti-aircraft rules, where if there are other planes, etc., going in, then you'll roll and choose which units you're losing, whether they be planes, bombers, or your paratroopers. So those are the significant rule changes for now. There's a couple of other minor rule changes. We've certainly changed a bunch of the national objectives to try to balance them off. We've tried to add strategic value to areas of the board historically ignored, and it is our intent to post this video now, and after we post the first couple of, or at least the first video, we'll post the actual version of the House rules online, open them up for comment and consideration. Possum, anything else?
I think that'll do it. Let's play.
See you after I beat him.